guests that I have on who I seek out who have been accurate now that I've had 16, 17 years to gauge and watch people. And you've been very steady, very accurate in what you've broken down. So here you are back again. I look forward to having you on the radio show, John. I said, it's been a couple years since you've been on it. And you said, yeah, but it seems like 3 months.
I know.
Things move so quickly now. What do you see in your crystal ball as going down this current road? I mean, I know we are destiny, so what we do affects things in the future. But in general terms, what are your new predictions for what's going to happen in the next year, 2 years, 3 years? What's front and center on your radar screen?
An intensification by the globalists to try to weld together this collectivist structure that includes the whole planet. And on the other side, the breakdown of that, decentralizing power. I remember the last time we talked on the radio, we talked about this, the decentralization of power. States are going to be screaming to get back more power from the federal government. Countries are going to be wanting to split off from horrendous governments and go back to their decentralized selves. You're going to see new models of ways of doing business that don't involve being mega corporations and so on and so forth. You're going to see some corporations begin to split off into smaller units that have more autonomous control, because the whole deal of gigantism, which is loaded at the top with all kinds of supernumeraries who really just, sit in their ivory towers and spin these incredible, unworkable scenarios, is collapsing all around us. And you're going to see more and more evidence of decentralization all over the place in many areas of human life, not just the ones that I've mentioned. So you're going to see these two trends. You're going to see, which means, of course, that we're going to have some kind of an incident, some kind of event, some kind of manufactured crisis, which is always an attempt to pull the collectivism back together, to exert more power, terrify more people, and so on. But it's not going to work. It is not going to work. There's going to be more and more decentralization coming up right on the horizon.
Well said. Wow, I wish I could say it that good. And the empire is going to strike back. And we see them pre-hyping terror attacks. They're now branding away from al-Qaeda, who they're using to attack Syria and Iran and Libya and other countries. And now al-Qaeda's good, according to them. And then they're moving over here to domestic groups, libertarians, conservatives, those evil Ron Paul people, why they're about to attack. And so I really see false flag as their central crises. They could use a flu release. I mean, all of that. But they're still, like you said, using a 20, 30, 40-year-old game when they had media superiority. Everybody knows about inside job or false flag. I mean, within 3 days of the underwear bombing 2 Christmases ago, my listener, Kurt Haskell, was saying, I saw the government get him on the plane. He comes on my show, talks about it. The media says that's ridiculous, but a month and a half later before Congress, the Undersecretary of State says, yeah, we were ordered to give him a visa and by a U.S. intelligence agency and get him on the plane. So, I mean, they've got to know that when they do things in the future, there are people that now know about the conspiracy. On the inside, they're going to be blowing the whistle.
Yeah, and you've been leading the charge in that respect, because people are coming out of the woodwork to talk to you because they know all of a sudden I've got access to millions of people. Why should they be hammering on the door of the New York Times to get in? Like at the end of 3 Days of the Condor, when Robert Redford is saying, they're going to publish, I'm blowing the whistle. And Cliff Robertson says, are you sure? Are you sure they're going to publish it? And that's where the movie ends. Well, now those people who want to come out of the woodwork and blow the whistle, they're sure. They're sure they're going to get instant access to millions of people by coming on your show. They know that. So why should they go to the New York Times? Why should they spend 5 years, trying to get the word out on something when it can be done in a matter of hours or minutes? So this is cutting down, the primacy of the insiders who have less and less power over these whistleblowers, people who actually have the truth to tell. This is also happening more and more and more, and it's a fantastically great thing.
Well, expanding on that, They could go to you and do it and reach millions of people. I mean, your blog and site gets hundreds of thousands of views a week or more. You go on shows with 15, 16 million listeners. I hear you all the time. And there's not just Alex Jones or John Rappaport. Again, there's all these prominent people, and there's new journalists coming up. And I can't tell you how many. The guy over at USA Watchdog, just a few years ago, he left CNN, ABC News, Nightline, and started his own thing. He's being successful. He's covering real issues. That's what the system ought to really be scared of, is that a lot of their big investigative reporters are kind of following what you did 16 years ago or whatever. They're exiting as well. And so there's almost a brain drain from the dinosaur media. As the ship goes down, a lot of people are saying, I'm not going down with this.
You're absolutely right. I've seen it happening, as you have over the last 15 years. Somebody pops up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, millions of hits on their site, and they're exposing all kinds of things. This, to me, is yet another example of decentralization. It's the decentralization of information from many, many good sources. And I think, politically speaking, inevitably, what this leads people back to is the Constitution. Because the Constitution was a primary statement of decentralization. That was what it was about. It was about saying, okay, now look, we're going to make a government here, but it's limited. You can't do this and you can't do that, because we know what happens if we gave you the power to do that. We've got the experience of Europe and the monarchies and the church and all of that behind us. We don't want that anymore. So as more and more people decentralize, I don't care what they say they are politically, my belief is they get closer and closer to going back to the basic fundamental constitutional principles of the republic, which is you're free as long as you don't interfere with anybody else's freedom. That's the way we're operating. And that's the revelation that more and more people are experiencing as this egg of informational brainwashing cracks in so many places, and the truth comes out, and people see so many centers of corruption and conspiracy. They say, wait a minute, we can't sustain a society like this. We have to get back to something else. What is it we want to get back to? And they find their way back to this idea. I want to be free. I don't want to interfere with anybody else's freedom, and I don't want them to interfere with mine. I think we can run things on that basis.
Exactly. And that's why the system's so scared of Ron Paul and has clearly cheated him in the election. I want to get your take on that. But John, you talk about decentralization. Here's another example. They can't just kill a John Rappaport or an Alex Jones, because there's now hundreds of people as prominent as we are, thousands who are almost as prominent, hundreds of thousands becoming prominent. I mean, the decentralization is just beginning. That's got to scare the system. But that's why I bring up Andrew Breitbart. I have talked to Eric Muller, syndicated radio host, 3-4 months ago. I even forgot to make this point till he was on my show today and said, Alex, don't you remember? He has a new show coming out on a big cable network. I'll leave it at that. He said, I want Andrew Breitbart, who's already signed on, to be a co-host, and I want you. And I said, well, there's no way that network's going to have me, so don't even entertain it. And he's still fighting for me to be on the show, even though I've told him it's not going to happen, even if he frankly offer it to me. But the point is, he said, yeah, Breitbart's got this incredible bombshell coming out that's going to destroy Obama. This is like 3 months ago, but he won't tell me, and I told him they're going to kill you. Now, I remember this phone call today while he's telling me about it on air. I had him on about Breitbart because I knew they were friends, and this is one more of those phone calls, and even though, Eric Mancow Muller's a real guy, I'm still hear lots of stuff about I'm going to have a TV show or whatever, on the dying dinosaur media, though that dying dinosaur is still the healthiest and the biggest of them all. He didn't want me to say which one, as if it's not obvious, where he's already had a show before. And he's telling me all this, and then you've got now Breitbart, the site has released a thing that we've confirmed was already in a Frontline thing years ago, some milquetoast deal with Obama in college talking about a professor who knew some radicals. What I'd heard from Mancow and others behind the scenes was this was Obama at communist meetings. This was Obama talking about overthrowing America. And I predicted he was going to release that footage March 1st. He dies in the early morning hours of March 1st after 2 glasses of wine at the local bar he went to almost every night when he was in town, right by his house. 2 glasses with friends and people sitting at the table. He'd talk to anybody. He goes out, he drops dead, and I said, okay, they announced he was natural causes without a coroner report. That's always a big sign in 2 hours. Right. No, I'm ranting, but just the background for new viewers. Then he was going to release all this March 1st that day. he was going to go after Obama. It's just too obvious. And then I forget, whoa, he was going to have a TV show as well. I think this is a shot across the bow. My guts, everything tells me that this is very suspicious. But the fact that he told Mancow, Eric Mueller, I've got stuff that will destroy Obama. And he's like, what is it? And he goes, it's so bad, he's going to be gone. He goes, well, who's going to be, Romney or Paul? That doesn't even matter. When I release this, he's gone. Now today they released this super boring video.
Yeah.
I smell a big, giant, stinking rat. I think they got pressured, and I think they've released crap.
I can't imagine that what Breitbart was talking about releasing was this stuff that I just saw a part of here before we went on the air. He's not that kind of a guy where he would say, look, I've got something that's an absolute blockbuster here, and then it turns out to be dishwater. That's not him. The thing that I think made them so afraid of him was that he was a jokester. You know, no, he would pull stunts, as we all know. He would send people in to videotape other people. He had a sense of the fluidity of media the way it is now, and how quickly you could get information out there if you could get it on tape. And as his imagination began to work, and I remember the last time we talked on radio, we talked about this too. Here we are. Use your imagination. There are millions of ways of getting this information out and showing the truth, and at the same time illustrating what fools and buffoons in many ways we're dealing with here. And that's the touch that this guy had, because he had fun. He enjoyed it. He loved, the competition and winning, and he was willing to go out on a limb and do it all and tape himself doing it and taping other people. And believe me, there's other people coming up the line like that. I've seen some of their stuff. They send me links to their videos. I don't even know who they are. But they're getting on that bandwagon of, boy, we got a camera and we can go places and we can find the truth. This is not going to stop.
Example, I gave cameras to a family that was down and out, and a little bit of other help, who were homeless 3 years ago on the streets. Now they've gotten jobs, back on their feet, and they've shot videos at least 6 or 7 times that I've seen that become big regional or national stories. The one last weekend was at the Kite Festival. I couldn't go to it. Biggest in the country, Austin every year. They had the Army out there searching people at Zilker Park, which, by the way, has no walls around it. It's a giant park in the middle of Austin with, hundreds of entrances. I mean, it's not even entrances. You can park on any road and walk in. There is no entrance. It's just a giant green area by the river. They had the Army out there acclimating everybody. So I don't have to go 100 miles or 1,000 miles to see an urban warfare drill. They have the Army out here groping people. But my point is, they shot video, and it's there. So we've seen the system try to arrest people for videotaping police in public, but now that's being thrown out in court. I mean, the system really is losing whenever we stand up to them.
Yeah, absolutely losing. There's no way that they can stop it. I mean, it's a flood. Yeah, that's a great story. You give people cameras and you tell them to go out there and find out what's happening.